Hi, I'm Ardit and I'm excited to welcome you to this course where you will be exploring the power of ChatGPT to build Python automations and apps with zero coding experience. In this course, we'll start by getting you familiar with ChatGPT, a powerful AI which can write Python code for you. Then I'll show you how to install a tool to execute the Python code that ChatGPT will generate for you so that you can get the desired results, the output of your programs. So you'll be equipped to run any Python program in your computer. And then we'll dive into how to query ChatGPT to write Python scripts and automate things like generating hundreds of files at once, modifying existing files, and other batch operations on different types of files. Then we'll use ChatGPT to write Python programs that analyze and visualize data, especially focusing on processing large amounts of data and files, which can be hard to do in programs such as Microsoft Excel. After that, you learn how to build web apps and then desktop GUI apps. So basically, you learn how to build all the popular types of programs using ChatGPT and Python. With 5 comprehensive sections, you'll get hands-on experience building real programs, and by the end of the course, you'll have the skills to write accurate queries for ChatGPT to communicate accurately with ChatGPT so that you can get working Python applications out of ChatGPT. Whether you're a student, a professional, or someone with an interest in automating things and creating apps, this course will show you the power of ChatGPT in the field of programming. So, ready to turn your ideas into programs? Let's get started. I'll see you in the next video. Hey, welcome back. In this video, I'll show you how to set up the tools you need to build apps without any coding experience. The first tool is going to be ChatGPT, which is going to generate code for us, and the second tool is where we run that code to create applications. The second tool is going to be Thonny. So let's start with the first tool, ChatGPT. ChatGPT is a web app, in other words, a website. That means you don't need to install anything in your computer. All you need to do is go to chat.openai.com. So load that web page, and that should take you to the ChatGPT interface, which I'll show you in just a bit. So you should see the interface of ChatGPT if you are already logged in. If you are not logged in, then you will see this view when you visit chat.openai.com. If you don't have an account yet, you need to go to the sign up button and just follow the instructions on creating an account with ChatGPT. If you have an account already but you are not logged in, you should go to the login button. So I do have an account, therefore I'll go to the login button. So login. That's my Gmail address I created for this course. Continue, and that should log you in to ChatGPT. So that's the ChatGPT interface. Now please open a new tab on your browser. Alright, now that we have ChatGPT set up, we need to install the second tool, and that is Thonny. So you want to go to thonny.org. So Thonny with .org. So visit that website, and that should take you to this page. It should look more or less like this. The page on your computer may look different, so some things may change, but you should be able to locate the download section, which is somewhere in here. So now there are versions for Windows computers, Mac computers, and Linux computers. So if you are on a Windows, you should hover your cursor over the Windows tab, and then you want to pick one of these. Usually you want to go with the first one. So most of Windows computers nowadays are 64-bit. So you want to go with that installer. If you are not sure whether you have a 64-bit or 32-bit computer, you can download the first one, and then if you get problems with the installation, then you can download the second one and try whatever works. For Mac computers, please download that. For Linux computers, you need to run this on the terminal. So I'm on a Windows computer, so I'll download this first file. That should download the executable file, so you can click this to install it. And then you should be taken through the installation process. You can select the first option, install for me only. So click there, go to next, 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 next. And it's a good idea to create a desktop icon. So I'll press on that checkbox, even though that is not a requirement. So press on next and then install. My installation was successful, so I can press on finish. Then it's a good idea to open the application just to try if it works, if it's installed correctly. So search among your programs for Thonny with double N. So that's my Thonny. You can also find it in the desktop. So in here, if you click that checkbox during the installation, so the checkbox that allows Thonny to stay in the desktop as a shortcut. So either way, you should see this window in the beginning. So I'll go for English and standard settings. So I'll press on let's go, and this should open up Thonny. So you can press on that maximize button to maximize Thonny. And yeah, if you see this view, that means Thonny was successfully installed, and now we're ready to build our first application. So we'll do that in the next video. I'll see you there. Hey, welcome to the first practical video where we'll do something with ChatGPT. We'll build a program. So I want you to open ChatGPT and Thonny. So for ChatGPT, you need to go to chat.openai.com, load that, and then open Thonny, so you can find Thonny either as a shortcut in your desktop or among your programs. I prefer to use the desktop shortcut to open Thonny. And you should see something like this. So what we want to do now is, as an example, we want to create 100 text files. Now this is just an example, so you can change this query, you can adjust it with your needs, and we'll have dozens other examples. But this is just a demo, so let's focus on actually getting this task done. So the task is, we want to create 100 text files, right? Each text file should contain a different boy's name inside. So let's say for some reason you wanted to create 100 text files, but you don't want to do that manually on your computer, right? You don't want to right click, create a new text file, then create another one, or copy paste and so on. It becomes very boring and annoying. So let me show you how to automate that. So this is like a blueprint I'll give, and you can do the same with other types of programs. So each text file should contain a different boy's name inside, right? And then we say, write me a Python script for that, dot, and execute. So press enter to execute, and then wait for a response from ChatGPT. If you get an error, try to reload the page. Sometimes you get errors, so try to push this button or just click here and press enter to reload the page. In my case, it's working, so I don't have to do this again, but if so, you need to reload the page and then write the query again. So this is the answer of ChatGPT. It normally should consist of an explanation what ChatGPT is about to do, and then it gives you the code. So this is the code that it is giving to me. Your code should be a slightly different, right? So don't expect your code to be identical with mine. The answers that ChatGPT provides change slightly depending on when you're writing them, or perhaps you did something different, some wording was different in your case. However, the core of the answer, the program, should behave the same generally. So what ChatGPT is doing now is writing Python code. So when ChatGPT finishes writing this code, we'll copy this code and we will build a program out of that. We will execute this code to generate the program output. To copy the code, you can do it here, but don't press it yet. So this button, copy code, or you can select it. But you first want that ChatGPT finishes with the writing. So it's still writing in my case. You will know when ChatGPT completed the code, when this disappears. So currently there's a stop generating button here, which implies that ChatGPT is still generating the answer, the response. So don't copy the code yet, because you'll be copying uncompleted code. So after this code, ChatGPT will also write an explanation what this code does. You don't have to read this, so if you are learning coding, then it might be meaningful and useful to read the explanation of the code. But I assume you don't want to go into the details of the code, you just want to create programs, and that's what this course is about. So without knowing any code, you want to be able to build complete programs. So you don't have to read the explanation here. In that case, since ChatGPT finished with the block of code, you can either wait for the answer to complete, but it's also fine to just copy the code now by pressing that button. Right, so what I've just done is I copied the code on my clipboard, so I can paste that code somewhere. So I'll go to Thonny. This is where we will paste that code and output the actual program, create the program. So normally your Thonny should look something like this, and there might be an open file already with the untitled tab here, but you can close that. I would suggest you to just close that. And so the first thing you want to do is you want to go to View and go to Files. Right. So what that will do is it will show you your file explorer, so the folders and files you have on your computer. So this is just like the Windows File Explorer or the Mac Finder, and it's currently pointing to my AS folder, which is inside users, inside my C drive. So that's the current path of this view here. So I have these folders inside the AS folder. Now, what I want to do is I want to create an empty folder where I'll place all my files that I'll build throughout this course. So I suggest you to do the same. I'll create that folder inside the AS folder, right? If you want to do it in another folder, so for example, under Documents, you want to double click over Documents like this, and that should point you to the new directory, Documents. So now we are inside the Documents folder on my computer. So if you want to go back, you click one of these folders. So I'll go back to AS and create a new directory. To create a new directory, you need to find like an empty area here and right click and then go to New Directory. So I'll write ChatGPT course and press OK. So a new ChatGPT course was created. This folder here. Now what you want to do is you want to double click that folder, and then you are inside that newly created folder, ChatGPT course. Right? Now inside this folder we want to create a new file. So right click somewhere in here, go to new file, type in a name for the new file, for example, lecture1.py. Now the first part, lecture 1, can be anything, so feel free to use your own naming for this, but the second part, .py, is mandatory, so please use .py as the extension and press OK. So this new empty file will be created in here, and then in this empty file you want to right click and paste the content we copied from ChatGPT. So that is the code that we copied from here. And then you want to press Ctrl S or Command S if you are on Mac, or you can go to File and Save. So save that, And when you do that, you'll see the file in this current directory. So in my case, it's inside ChatGPT course, this folder. So what we've just done so far is we created a new Python program. We haven't executed the program yet, so we haven't seen the output yet, what this program does. But we do have the program already, and that is stored inside lecture1.py inside the ChatGPT course folder, which is inside AS, which is part of users and part of C. So if I open my file explorer, so here is my C drive, and if I go to users, right, users, and then if I go to AS, and then if I go to ChatGPT course, you'll see lecture1.py in that folder. The icon might be different in your computer, so don't worry about the icon, but that's the actual file. So it reflects that. That's just something that I wanted to show you. You don't have to open your file explorer, so just to demonstrate you what's going on. Basically, you want to work on Thonny, this program. You normally won't have to open your file explorer on Windows or Mac, wherever you are working. So Thonny is all-inclusive. Right, so now let's try to run this program and see what output we get. To run a program, you want to go to this icon. You see the green button with a triangle inside. So you want to press that, or alternatively, you can go to run and then go to this run current script, or you can also press F5 or whatever shortcuts you see here. In my case, it is F5. So either way, I prefer to use this button, run that, and the program finished executing, and I'll show you where the output actually is in just a bit, but you know that the program finished executing when you see this line here in the shell area. You see shell, and then you see these arrows. If you see these arrows here, that means the program finished executing. Now, where is the output? Well, to see the output, we want to refresh this directory here. To do that, you want to go back to the upper folder. In my case, it is AS, so click on AS, and then click back again, so double click on ChatGPT course or whatever folder you are using. So double click there, and now this view is refreshed and you see boy names here. So boy names is a folder in the same directory with lecture1.py. And also, just for the sake of curiosity, if you go to your file explorer and you go to your C drive, users again, AS and ChatGPT course, you'll see that the folder is also there. Right, so now you can double click inside that folder and you'll see all the files generated. So 100 files. Right, starting from file 1. The sorting of these files is based on alphabetic order, so that's why we see 1 and then 10 and then 100 and so on. Anyway, that's another thing, but if you click any of these files, so for example file2.txt, that file will open here in Thonny and you'll see the content of that file. So Benjamin, file 20, Finn, 21, Tyler, and so on. The content in your case, of course, will be different, so maybe file 21 has John inside, another file has another name, and so on. So the names are randomly assigned to each of these files. Of course, you can also open those files from your file explorer, so boy names, you have all these files here, right? It's the same set of files. To go back to the ChatGPT course directory, you just click here. That's the code and that is the output. So the output was boy names. Perhaps in your case it generated the files directly in this ChatGPT course directory. That could be the case also. As I mentioned, the code generated in your case could be slightly different than mine. So be aware of that. But in my case, the program created a boy names file. Now, one very important tip is you don't want to mess up with this Python file, with the lecture1.py file, right? So that was how to create a program with ChatGPT and Python. So that was Python code that was generated by ChatGPT. Now this was just an example. We'll have many more exciting examples throughout the course, and I'll give you tricks and tips on how to make the best use of ChatGPT. And we'll not only create programs, but you'll learn how to change those programs as well, how to adjust them, optimize them, because I understand that this program might not be exactly what you're looking for. So you may want to follow up with ChatGPT to ask it more questions, to give you some changes, to make some changes in the program, and then you execute that again. So that's a lot of cool things that you can do with ChatGPT and Python. This is really an exciting area of computer programming, so everyone can actually make use of programming through the help of ChatGPT. So I hope you're excited as much as I am, and I'll see you in the next videos with more examples. See you there. Hey, welcome back. In this video I'll give you an introduction to the IDE we are using. This program here. What is an IDE? An IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment. In our case, the IDE is called Thonny. So Thonny is this thing here where we write and run programs. So in the previous video, that's what we did, right? We wrote this program. Well, we wrote it through ChatGPT, but that's still writing a program. And then we ran that program, we executed the program. So when you say running a program and executing a program is the same thing. So we executed the program using that button. So you can do all that in an IDE in this place here, right? Now I want to give you an introduction, to give you a walkthrough on Thonny, the main features, so that you are sure you're using it the correct way. There are three main areas of Thonny. The file explorer here on the left, which you can show or hide using the view files menu. So you can uncheck that and then you can go back to view files to show that again. So that's the file explorer. You see the file explorer always points to a particular folder, right? Currently it's ChatGPT course, in my case, this folder. And then we have the file editor area in here. So when you double click a file, which could be a .py file that contains Python code or a text file, then the content of that file will show here. So make sure not to edit the Python code unless you know what you're doing. And then if you have double-clicked multiple files, for example this and that, all those files will open here as tabs, so you can click any of them and you can see the content of each file. And then we have the other area, the shell, in here. When you run a Python file, for example, we ran this file previously to generate the output, then Thonny sends this text here. So basically think of this shell as the area where you see these notifications about what's going on. So this, for example, means that Thonny just ran your program, so run lecture1.py, and then this line here means Thonny finished running the program and then you're ready to see the output. Now this type of program created some external files, so some text files, it generated some text files as output, but some programs may generate text. I'll show you an example of that right now. Let's create another program which generates text. This will be a very simple program which you don't have to use ChatGPT to generate that program, you can just write that program right away. So to do that, you need to make sure you are inside the ChatGPT course folder. So click there to go back to ChatGPT course. So this is the same directory where lecture1.py is located. So we want to right click over the empty area and then go to new file. Write a name for this, for example, lecture2, and make sure to have a .py extension, right? And then type in print opening and closing parentheses, and then move the cursor inside the parentheses and write 2 double quotes. So 1, 2, and inside the double quotes just say hello. And then let's run this file. Let's execute this program to see the output. To execute this program, you can use this button, Run Current Script, or press F5. I showed that to you already, but be careful here. So if you want to execute lecture2.py, then you want to make sure that lecture2.py is the currently opened file in the file editor here, right? Because if you have opened lecture1.py, for example, and you press that button, that will execute lecture1.py and not lecture2.py. So make sure that this file is opened here and then press that button. Now, you don't have to save the file actually, so if you want, you can press Ctrl S to save the code we just wrote, but that's not necessary because when you press that button will first save the file and then it will execute it. So I'll just press that and then you'll see the output here, hello, and then this empty arrows, which means the program finished executing. So that's the output in this case. So in this program there were no files generated, this was just a simple program just to print out hello. So it's completely useless, but I just wanted to make a point that you can also see output sometimes in this area, in the shell. Now this was just hello, but sometimes you may have more useful programs such as calculating miles out of kilometers, so doing conversions, converting from USD to euros and so on. So in such cases you will see the output in here for those programs. So that's how you create multiple files. So always right click here, go to new file, and if you want to create new directories, go to new directory. Always make sure you are aware of where this folder is located. And before we close this video, I want to show you another feature of Thonny. So if you go to view, you'll see we have files and shell already checked. There are some other features which you can check, but you will not actually need these. So these are for more seasoned programmers who actually type in code and they want to understand what's going on in the code. For you, you only want to create programs that work, that automate things. So you don't need this, but there's a cool feature you may need, and that's nodes. So if you check nodes, you'll see this view here. So this nodes here stays here even if you close this. So let's say this is my first node, right? 1, and then I close Thonny, and then tomorrow I work with Thonny again and the nodes will still be there. So that's a section which you can use just to take notes while you're learning. So perhaps you want to organize the notes with like sections, like section 1 of the course getting started. And perhaps you want to say lecture 1 and the things you learned with bullet points. So it's a minimal interface to take notes, but that's actually sometimes a good thing because it keeps you focused on actually writing the code instead of getting lost with features of a note-taking app. Anyway, that's just optional, so feel free to use notes or not. I'll just close it to keep the view here more clean for you, and that was about Thonny. In the next video, I'll show you how to create good queries to ask ChatGPT. So queries about creating Python programs. I'll see you there. Hey, welcome to another video. So far we looked at how to query ChatGPT to make programs for us, and you saw how to run that program in Thonny. Now I want to go back to the query and explain you how to write a good query in ChatGPT to get good answers when it comes to creating programs, Python programs with ChatGPT. So let's start. The very first thing I want you to understand is that you should talk to ChatGPT as it was a very experienced programmer. So whenever you place the cursor in the text box here, think as you are chatting with a very experienced programmer who is very patient to listen to your query, to what you want to build, and who knows everything about programming. And then all you have to do is just communicate your wishes clearly. So how do you make a clear query to your friend, to your programmer friend, to ChatGPT? Let me show that to you. So let's take the example we wrote earlier in the demo video, which was this one here. I want to create 100 text files. Each text file should contain a different boy's name inside. Write me a Python script for that. A good query is made of 3 parts. That's one part, that's another part, and that's the third part. The first part is where you declare what you want to build. So this is usually one sentence. So can you describe what you want to build in one sentence? This is what you do here. So that's, I want to create 100 text files, right? But then you want to give the details to your program. And the details can be in one or more sentences. So in our case, the details were each text file should contain a different boy's name inside. So that sentence adds up to the main description of your program, right? I'll give you another example of another query using this anatomy. So that's the first part, the description of the program in one sentence, the details about the program, which could be one or more sentences, and then the last part is generally one sentence. So you describe what you want to do, you describe what you want to accomplish, but then you want to specify, you want to be specific what you want ChatGPT to do for you. So you say, write me a Python script for that. So this is important. It's important to say Python script. Script can also be program, so you can use script or program. Either way, it's fine. Usually we say script for smaller programs. So programs which do one thing, so they generate some files and that's it. And we use the word program for bigger programs which can do multiple things, like generating files and perhaps having a feature where you upload those files to some remote servers and so on. Anyway, if you use script, you are fine, but either way, it's also fine. So now let's use this anatomy to write another query. So we want to write another query. That means we want to create a new program. So for that, you need to open a new chat. So click over new chat. And then in the text box, we want to write the new query. So anytime you need to create a new program, it's good to write the query in a new chat instead of using the same chat for all the programs. This way you'll keep your programs more organized, your chats more organized. So one chat, one program. Let's suppose you want to create some empty folders. Let's say you want to create 100 empty folders with a particular naming convention. So for that, we'll use the anatomy that I just explained to you. You want to first describe in general, just to let ChatGPT know what you want in general. So I want to create 100 empty folders. And then you give the details in one or more sentences. The folders should be named like 1A, 2A, 3A, up to 100A, right? So that makes it 100 folders. So you'd say, will ChatGPT understand me this? Well, if a human can understand this question, right, then ChatGPT will understand it also. And then I would like to add one more detail. All those folders should be inside a folder named all in quotes. So that is the details of the question. And then I want to say, write me a Python script for that. Press enter and let's wait for the new code. So what I just asked ChatGPT to do is to create a script, a Python script, which when executed, it will create an all folder, a folder named all, and inside that folder, there will be 100 folders named under this series of numbers and ending with a letter. So let's see. So there we go, we got the code. ChatGPT is now generating an explanation on what the code does, but I can copy the code and go to Thonny, create here a new Python file. So right click, new file, lecture 4.py, press enter, paste the code here, and then run the code. Right, I just ran the code and I see these arrows. That means the execution was completed, and I can refresh this directory by going back to AS and then going back to that directory, ChatGPT course. There we go, that's the all folder. If I double click here to enter that folder, we'll see we have 100 folders named under that convention. So 1A up to 100A. Thonny is sorting these alphabetically, but that's another issue. So perhaps if you go to your file explorer where this all folder is located, then you can sort them using that file system features on Windows or Mac or Linux, wherever you are. So that's another point, but we do have 100 empty folders here. So this could be very useful if you're working with files. Perhaps you do some batch operations, you are organizing some data. So instead of creating folders manually on your operating system, on your computer, you just use Python. So I hope you are enjoying these automations, and we have a lot more automations to do, very interesting ones. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. See you. Hey, welcome back. In the previous video, I showed you how to create a good query to ask ChatGPT. In this video, I want to stop a little bit on the Python code that we are getting from ChatGPT. I want to give you a rough introduction to the Python language. You don't really need to know this, but it's just some extra knowledge that will give you some more orientation of what's going on here. Let's start from the query. So we ask ChatGPT a query, and ChatGPT gives us this code. So what is this code that ChatGPT gives us? Well, when we installed Thonny, we installed this program that you see here, where we write codes and we have this file structure here. But also on the background, we have also installed a Python interpreter. That's also another software which Thonny installs on the background. Now, this Python interpreter is a software designed to understand Python code, Python language. So this here is just a language, and the interpreter is interpreting this language. And then the interpreter translates this code to machine language, another language which the processor, the computer processor, can understand. So your computer processor is getting like this code, but in another form, and then the computer processor follows the instructions. For example, in this case, it does create a folder named all with 100 folders inside. So that's how Python works. You write the code, you execute it, and when you execute it, you are sending those instructions to the processor, and you get back the output. Now let me go quickly through the Python code just to give you an introduction to what's going on. You don't really need to know this actually, but it doesn't harm to have some knowledge of what's going on. So usually at the top here you'll have one or more import statements. For example, here we have one, import OS. OS is a module and import is what we call a statement. So you are importing that module. Then this one here is a comment. So it's not actually an instruction, it doesn't tell the processor to do anything. This is just a comment, usually for programmers, so you know what's going on in the next line. So this is actual code, os make dir, so this creates a directory named all, and here you explain what this code will do. So ChatGPT is writing all that code for us, and it's also creating some comments, so that's good. And then we have the other comments, so create 100 directories, 1A, 2A, that's also a comment. So it's just for us to know what's going on in the next one line or in the next multiple lines. So this comment is explaining what's going on in the next multiple lines, right? So in these lines, the generation of those 100 folders is happening. So that's all you need to know. You don't need to go through the details of each line, but roughly that's the idea. So if you want to understand some more about the Python code, it's good to read the comments and then you'll know what's going on in the next one or multiple lines. But if you want to get some more explanation about the code, then you want to read the explanation that ChatGPT gives you, right? Which is under the code here. So we ask the query, we get one or two sentences here where ChatGPT is telling us what it's about to do, and then we get the code, and then here you get the explanation of the code. So the OS module is imported to work with directories and file paths and so on. So it does explain then the OS make dirs directory, so it's referring to this. And then the for loop, which is this one here. So that would be another place where you could learn more about the code. Again, I would like to emphasize that you'll normally not need to know about the codes. You'll probably never need to know about it. So what you need to know is how to be a good communicator with ChatGPT. So even when ChatGPT does not give you the correct code, which does not produce the expected output, even when that happens, you should be able to know how to follow up with more questions to make ChatGPT give you the actual correct code. And I'll teach you how to ask follow-up questions, how to create follow-up queries in the same chat unit. So with that, thanks a lot for following, and I'll see you in the next videos with more examples. Hey, so far you learned how to create queries to get programs produced by ChatGPT. In this video, I'll show you how to follow up to a previous query. So let's create a new query for now. And then we'll ask another question to follow up with this query. You'll understand what this is exactly. So let's create a new program. Let's say I want to create 10 text files. Each text file should have as name the current date. Write me a Python script for that. Press enter. That's the original query. Now we'll get this program, we'll run it, and then we will want to change something from that program. So I'll show you how to ask a follow-up question to ChatGPT. So there we go, that's the program being typed in by ChatGPT. Let's wait a while. So the generation of the code is completed, so I'll just copy the code, go to Thonny, create a new file, lecture5.py. So that's an empty file. It's in my ChatGPT course folder, right? I'll paste the code and run it. So there is my lecture.py file. Let's go back one folder just to refresh and then go back to our folder. So there we go. That's the 10 files, 10 text files, right? So far, so good. So we've got the current date for each file. ChatGPT is adding one number. Otherwise, we would end up with duplicate file names, which is not possible. So ChatGPT is very smart here to add that number after each date. Now, what if we didn't want this format? What if instead of dashes between the year and the month and the day, what if we wanted a dot instead of that? So perhaps in your case, ChatGPT didn't generate a dash between the year, the month and the day, but you got a dot or maybe something else. So you may want to change that to something else. In my case, I want to ask ChatGPT to give me a dot between these items. So in that case, I want to ask a follow-up question, a follow-up query. I want the file names to be in the format year dot month dot day dash n. So n is for the number, right? So, and then you say rewrite the script. So the follow-up query consists of two parts. First, you want to say what you want in relation to the previous query. So you want the file names being the names of the files that were generated in the previous query. So as I mentioned before, ChatGPT has conversational capabilities, so it knows what was going on in this chat. It's like you're talking to a programmer, right? Face to face, and then you ask the first query, and then in the second query, in the second question, you just follow up with the question without having to reiterate what you've been doing so far. Right, so that would be the query. I'll press enter, and ChatGPT should now give me the updated code. So there we go. Here's the updated Python script that creates 10 text files, each named after the current date using the datetime module. This is a module Python is using. Import datetime. Anyway, that's something about Python. We're not concerned about the details of the Python script, but this will be the new format. So let's see. Yeah, the generation of the code is completed. So I'll copy the code, go back here. Now, you want to delete the previous outputs. Whenever you want to rerun a program that was generating some output, some text files or something else, then it's good to delete that output. So you can click over a file, right click and go to move to trash. And you'll have to do that for all the files one by one, because Thonny for now doesn't support selection of multiple files. So I've just deleted all those text files, and now I will select this code with my cursor or Ctrl A to select all of it, delete with the delete button, and then Ctrl V to paste the updated code. Then run. And the execution was completed, so then I can go back to AS and then go back to ChatGPT course. And there we go, that's the new format, exactly like I asked for. So the year, dot, the month, dot, the day, a dash, and the number. So that is how you can ask follow-up queries. Always use the same chat where you ask the original question. Otherwise, if you go to another chat, ChatGPT will not know what you were talking about. So you want to express your wish, what you want to do, and then give the command to rewrite the script. That's about follow-up queries. Thanks a lot. I'll see you later.